So Nest.js is one of the backend server frameworks that is available. So if you are familiar with some frameworks like Angular, you will find Nest.js pretty much similar. So it's a framework built on top of several technology stacks. So if I go to the Nest.js website, you will find Nest.js is a progressive web framework. Okay, so this is the implementation of Nest.js. If you guys are looking into the things, so before I moved into the implementation, this documentation is gonna help you a lot. Okay, even now and then I come to this documentation and find anything find anything that needs support with. If I need something to be worked with, I come to Nest.js and try to get the implementations, anything that I need from here. Okay, so make sure we are using TypeScript. JavaScript is okay, but it is kind of the king of errors, if I may say. So TypeScript is much better in terms of learning the application. So we'll be developing, most probably we will be using something like push notification service that we have seen, but built using Nest.js rather than pushing the notification from Firebase. We will be implementing our own backend, and that backend will be written in TypeScript using Node.js, as well as the framework of choice would be Nest.js. So going into Nest.js, you will find a lot of information, but don't worry, you don't need to start from everything in here. I'll give you a head start, and with the head start, you can get things way faster. Okay. The next thing that I
So
would...
what is the difference between Node.js project and Nest.js?
So Node.js is under the hood. Everything is powered using Node.js. Okay. So Node.js has the runtime for running this application. For example, Node.js is like, think Node.js as a language or engine that supports. So for example, Node.js is like giving you the features that you need to build the application, like file system access, web servers, and other runtime variables and all those things. Okay, so Nest.js is built on top of Node.js. It's helped us to build web application on top of Node.js. Okay, so Node.js just giving us the basics. Nest.js is taking it to a next level and giving us web-related features like creating a web server, uh, providing a REST endpoint, authentication, that kind of thing is provided by Nest.js. Okay, so Node.js, think if you guys coming from another different language, let's say Python. Okay, Python is the language that we're going to be using. So Node.js is it's kind of the runtime environment, and Python is the runtime environment for other projects. So Nest.js is built on top of Node.js to run web application. Same as in Python, you have frameworks like Django, or we have Fastify. So those kind of frameworks are there for other languages. For even Node.js, you have other backend implementation or backend frameworks. So Nest.js is just one of them. There is one popular one called Okio. Let me check. Node.js. What are the other frameworks like? There is the Koi. Yes, Koi is one of the frameworks. So most of the time, these frameworks gives us support in terms of building core.js. Okay, so core.js, Nest.js, those kind of applications will have some pre-built-in things that you can start working on. But plain.js have different libraries, different different runtimes. Actually, Node.js is having a JavaScript V8 runtime, but you have different libraries, but those are not built into the glued together to create a framework. So Node.js is having the building blocks. Nest.js is one of the frameworks built using those building blocks. Okay, there is core.js. Core.js is one of the backend frameworks. So those things are also built on top of Node.js, but using different libraries and different things. We'll see what are the libraries and everything that is using in the Nest.js. Right now, we'll get started with some of the things. So there are other frameworks as well, like most of the time, Node.js will support other frameworks like front-end frameworks, okay, like React.js, and you have AngularJS, Sail.js, Meteor.js, and there are a lot of frameworks supports out there, but they sometimes they are only for front end, sometimes they are only for back end, and there are frameworks which support full stack as well. So you can create the back end and front end even with the same stack. Okay, so think Node.js.
So then,
Yeah.
Nest.js similar to Express or different?
Different. Nest.js is built on top of Express or Fastify. You can select whatever the underlying implementation. So you can use either Express server or a Fastify server. So talking about Express and Fastify even, those are web servers, but those are not giving the full implementation for frameworks. So those are like building blocks. So on top of Express, we have come up with the framework. Say, for example, we want to create a REST endpoint. You have some features that is coming from Express, but say for instance you want to modularize the application. How you going to do that? Say for example you want to create applications with, let's say for example, microservice. So that's kind of thing. Express is not something that is built for those kind of purpose. Express is basically can handle middleware. It has its own request and response mechanism, but it does not have some things like authentication. We have to have authentication in place if you are using Express. So there are different libraries that we need to use. So using those libraries, we have to handle authentication. Even middleware, I think it's supported by Express. But not all the features that we need for a full-fledged web application can be fulfilled with Express. Okay, so we have Express as underlying web server, but not everything. To add more things, add more features, we have frameworks like Nest.js, Core.js. You can use whatever you like. Okay, so these things are like what do you call more of a standard way of doing things. Say for example, we need to configure, let's say, a database. Okay, so we have Mongo implementation. We can use Mongoose implementation, but there are several ways that we can do database injection, but in Nest.js, you will find more of a structured way to do so. Especially Nest.js have the concept called dependency injection. So you have the dependency injection in your disposal to work with. So it is less hassle. The configuration will be much more easy. So you will see dependency injection in handle, why it is important, why the modularization helps, what sort of things that it comes with. You will see the entire architecture. So if you use something like Express or Fastify, you do not get the best practice or best architects that you can follow. Anyone can take Express and build their own framework, and they can build their own way. I have seen a lot of projects that take base Express and they add their own things, and sometimes they do not even follow a pattern like MVC, MVP, or something like that. Those things are not going to be there. So using a framework, what it fundamentally do is it gives order, and it gives us a thinking process or a structure that we can follow. So by following this structure, it will make our life easier, first thing, and the uniformity will make things easy to understand by other coders. And most importantly, the support it gets, the supports that we are getting out of the frameworks, it's gonna gives us more of flexibility to our applications, and we can have things like, for example, we have CLI integration. That means using a CLI, we can easily create some features. Say, for example, I need to create a complete REST endpoint with service integrations, controller integration, test integration, those kind of things. So using a CLI tool, I'm not sure whether Express or Fastify have those things right now, but with a one single command, you can create a code section which will easy our usage, and it will be uniform throughout the application. So yes, it's built on top of either Express or Fastify. By default, it is Express. And the most important thing is it's going to give us a structure to work with. Okay, is that enough information? You need more clarification as well? I'm not sure. I did not see who was asking. Who asked us? I didn't clearly did not see the person. Hello. I did not get the person who asked the question. Can you please confirm whether the information is enough, or do I need to explain more?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dharam. Good questions, good things that you are asking. Let's see it in action, and we will get into more of these things. So you can see it in the introduction. You will see why it is using. So under the hood, it makes robust server frameworks like Express the default option. You can use Fastify. So it's gonna give us a more efficient, scalable server-side application. That is like their motto. Yeah, TypeScript is what we are using. So we get the function object-oriented things and functional programming in TypeScript. And we got also the reactive programming. So we have the Nest provides a level of abstraction above CommonJS framework. So that is also one thing I forgot to ask, the abstraction. So you don't have to have the underlying core knowledge on Express, but it is a level of abstraction that's that gives us a freedom, but it's sometimes it restrict the way that we think about the things that we do. For example, if we create something using Next.js, it has its own way of modularizing things. It has its own way of organizing the code. So that that is something we have to obey by. That is something we can already see in most of the frameworks like Angular, Nest.js. I'm not talking about Next, N-E-X-T. That is a React framework. So all those things, what they do is they give us a structure, a way of doing things, and it's gonna help us to write code more efficiently. Okay, so you guys can see the philosophy, why we need something over a traditional Nest-based application. You guys can see these things. Okay. All right. Hope that's helped. Next thing that I'm gonna do is there is this Nest.js CLI where you can create a new project using Nest.js. This CLI will gives you to create application and so on and so forth. But I would like to use another tool, which is called Laravel. Okay, it is also one of the tools that I will be using throughout the course in next dev. Okay, so this is what we call a monorepo. Okay, the monorepo advantages is like we are not say for instance we are in here, we are only building what we call backend only, but sometimes we need to create a nice UI for the users to interact with, so we need a front end as well. So using a monorepo, we can have the backend and front end in the same code base. By using that, we can share code, we can leverage the smart build, and there are a lot of advantages when it is coming to monorepos. So we can create applications using monorepos. Okay, so I'll be not using the NX CLI, but I am going to use something called the NX workspace. So make sure before you get into these things, you have installed Node. Okay, you can see Node -v. I'm using Node version 19.9. So that is the only requirement that you need. So if you have Node and you are in a directory where you can start your next project, just create this npx create workspace at latest. This is where something what we call a workspace is coming to place. So a workplace is a combination of front end and back end projects or glued together. You can have a backend project, that is also fine. You can have a front end project, that is also fine. If you want both to be same, you can have that one as well. Okay, I'll just in case I will create a backend. I will create a monorepo. So in the future, if I want to add a front end, I can do it in here and do some code release, code sharing, and there is a lot of stuff going on with this grade too. Okay, where I would like to create your workspace, I would say it is something like, let's say, H1 Beaker. It's not that much important workspace name. So you have the other option. You can create empty minimal structure, or you can create a React application if you want to create an Angular application. But since we are focusing on a Node.js backend application, I would go with Node. So you have the Express. You can create an Express application. Yes, as mentioned earlier, you can create a Fastify application. You can create a Core application, or you can use an SJS. You can go either one of these things. It's okay. It's up to you. But I find myself Nest.js is easy to use, and it is more structured, and you will find a lot of easy things compared to these frameworks. But I'm not saying these are bad or something like that. It's just a personal favor of mine. I will use the Nest.js frameworks for now. Okay, so you have the standalone and integrated monorepo. So standalone means I'm only going to be using backend only. So if I say monorepo, then later on I can add the front ends if I like. So I will be going in the safe side. I will say integrated monorepo. Monorepo will contain more than one application. So application name, I can name whatever you like. I will say push it. So it's gonna send push notification. So there is the concept of Docker. Would you like to create Docker files? I would say yes, but if you don't know Docker, that is fine. Enable distributed caching. So this is something something that will make our application build faster. Right now, I'm not interested in building it faster. I'll just say no. But if you want to if you are deploying this application to cloud, make sure you have the distributed caching enable. It will be like a very useful feature when you are building stuff for the deployment. Believe me, it's a file that is building for 15 minutes using cache. You can build it for 1 or 2 seconds. That's kind of speed that we are talking. But right now, I'm not interested in, so I will click no. So now, now we wait. If you know, backend or front end programming, so this is the most hardest part at all. You have to wait until all the Node.js modules and everything is coming into place. Right now, let me see whether I have some code that I can explain. Unfortunately, I think I have not created anything. It's gonna go and fetch things from internet, especially with the dependencies and everything. So it will little bit of time. So while we are doing that, we will take. Let me put this in my other monitor so I can monitor the progress right now. And okay, so a basic basic application that we will be creating, we will have some things like this. Okay, a smaller project, we will have a main TS. Okay, since we are using TypeScript, so the main TS will have the starting point of our application. So this is where everything will be starting, especially the server that we are working with. So if we are using Express, the main server will spin up Express server under a given port, and this section will be something like where we do the configuration. What is the port number that we want to write? We want to run the server. What sort of configurations that we need to do in the application? For example, if I want to connect, if I want to enable cross-site origins, this is the place that we gonna do. If you want to register something like middlewares, we will see what middlewares are. If you want to register middlewares, these kind of things will be coming in this place as well. So we have these concept called modules. Okay, if you are coming from front-end frameworks like Angular, you will find this concept pretty much familiar with yourself. Okay, so modules is like where we uh, keep a section of our code, or what we can call a more relative uh, unit of function in a whole together. Okay, so app module, this app module uh, will have things like services, and we'll have things like controllers. So when we are using a module, so module is like a grouping point for our services, controllers, and there are other things like pipe guards, interceptors as well. But basically, most of the time, we will have services and controllers. Okay, so the controller that we are seeing here is the front-facing part of our application. So we'll be creating a REST API, and when we are creating a REST API, the the interaction part, the API, when we want to invoke something, it comes through different of middlewares and all. But at the end, the first interaction point for our code is going to be this controller. Okay, we have a thing called controller. Within the controller, uh, within this controller, we will be able to interact with the application. So this controller is going to be the place where we'll be interacting with the get request, post request, put request, and all those things we have seen throughout our application with a REST API or something like that. So this is the place where we're going to do the bindings, and a REST. When the controller receives some payload, when somebody is calling the REST endpoints, the next section of the controller is to handle this. It's gonna check whether the things are in order, whether validations are okay, and we have all the necessary data in order to process. Then we hand over the request, something called the service. Okay, it's that is like the tiered architecture wise what we're gonna do. In tiered architecture, we have things like services, controllers. So controllers is the first tier, and the service is going to be something like what we call a second tier. Okay, so once the validations and everything is done, we hand over the request, at least some part of it or modified part, to the service. So service is where we execute our business logic. Okay, so business logic execution happens in the app.service.ts. So within the app.service.ts, what will happen is we will be able to execute the business logic behind our applications. Okay, so this once the app service find out, okay, we have everything we need, we have everything that we can execute, the web service will process the data. Say, for instance, we want to connect to a database and all those stuff. Once it is done, the database insertion is done, validation is done. Then again, the service gives back the gives back these things to the controller. So the controller will give back to the user saying, okay, your request is done, or your request is failed, or is there some error code or success code, whatever we want to communicate to the user regarding that request will be handed over to the controller. So the controller will give and tell the user, hey, you have successfully done that, or you have failed to do so. Okay, let's see whether we have the application created. I think we have SBS code. Not this one. CD, so if I look at the created project, So it has the workspace that I have created. I have given the workspace name as Hrandika. So I can see that it is Hrandika in here. So I can cd into Hrandika and I will start VS Code from here. Okay. So this is like the generated code for us. This is like where a normal application would look like. Okay. So we have, if you guys can remember, let me zoom in a little bit. So we name our application push it. If you can remember the application name that we're gonna create, it's called push it. Okay, so push it is the backend service, and we have pushed it end-to-end testing. That means we get end-to-end testing configured within our application. So that is something good. So we can end-to-end test our code in here. Okay, so it's following Cypress in order to get these things and everything, whether it is working or not. And we have uh, we have uh, we have our main source code in here, push it, and we have a bunch of configuration. We are not like really interested in these things. So we talked about the main TS. So this is like the starting point for our application. So you guys can see we have something called nest, and we are creating an app module. This is like the app module we consider the starting point for application. And every request that we are going to be using is prefixed with API. So any request that is coming to our Nest.js application have to have API in the endpoint, or the endpoint that we are calling. So we are setting the global prefix. And if somebody haven't proposed a port, we will start our application in port 3000. And once it is done, we will get a message saying, okay, we have started this in our 3000 port. So I'm going to change the port number. So I'm not conflicting with my running application. I will run my application in 3030. Okay, that means when I start this application, it's going to start in port 3030. Okay, not port 3000, which I'm using right now. So we'll go to the app module in here. You can see the app module in here. So app module, if I look at the app module, so as I mentioned, a module is a grouping for our controllers and other modules. So in here, we are providing a controller in this section. The controller belongs to the app module. Okay, we have app controller, and we have a providers. These are like the injectable parts of our application, and that is called the assets. So let's go, and there can be another imports. This import should be another module. Let's say we are depending on another module. We have to import it from here. Right now, we do not have something like that. We will just skip around it. And first, we will go to the controller. So it's a basic controller. So you can see it's annotated with at controller, indicating that this is a controller, and this is going to be a REST controller by default. That means it's going to give us a REST endpoint to work with. And we have named it app controller, and there is one method called get data, and it is expecting a get method. That means if somebody in here, the controller has no endpoint defined, then it's going to be default to it's going to be default to the /API. Because why it is /API? In the main.ts, we have set the prefix for all the controllers, that any controller would have the global prefix of API. So in this scenario, this is going to be /API, no, nothing else. And this get method is also it's not having any value. So this is equivalent to /API as well. Okay, so this controller is representing this endpoint. Since this get method has no message to it, sorry, no endpoint to it. It's gonna be responding to /API, and the method that is corresponding is gonna be a get method. So we have other methods as well: put, patch, post, or delete, whatever the more things that we like. But in this scenario, we will be working with a get request. Okay, and the method name does not have an effect on it. This function, this method, actually, this method has method name is nothing to do with that. You can easily call whatever you name, but making it the following the rest command type would definitely help on future naming and everything. Okay, so we are calling this API service get data method. So API service is the next class that we're going to be looking at. So one thing that you guys can see it here is the dependency injection. The dependency injection come in. So we do not have create an instance of app service. We can inject the app service into our controller by using this constructor injection. So we are injecting our service into our controller by using this command. So it's gonna say private read only, because we can't change the app service. So I am instantiating, I am requesting a new app service into our application, and we are using the app service in here. So make sure if you are injecting this app service, it should be within this controller's scope, controller's module in this scenario. So you guys can see the controller is registered in the app module, and the same service, the app service, also registered in this module. So in this scenario, we can access the app service within the app controller. If we do not have this provider section or injection section in here, we cannot access the API controller. Sorry, app service injection will not work. So if we have a service out of this module, okay, not within this module, it should be imported in a different module that is also work. So if, for instance, we have another module, let's say we call user module. We can have a user module, and we can inject the user service if the user module is registered in the import section. We'll see about that in a little bit. So otherwise, we will get confused. Right now, only app controller will work if we have the app service within the same app module. Otherwise, the dependency injection won't work. This dependency injection, in order to work, we have to have these things in the same module. Okay, so let's go to the app service, and you guys can see that it is something annotated with at injectable. That means if you do not have this injectable decoration, so then again it is not be able to inject to the app control. So make sure it is the service class is annotated with injectable. It is registered in the module using the providers section. Then we can use the app service within the module itself. Okay, and app service, it's not connected to any database or anything like that. It's just gonna say it's have one method, get data, and it's gonna give us a small message containing hello API. So that's it. So it's the basic application. So we call this service using our controller. Since we have dependency injection, we do not have to initiate anything. The dependency injection will happen, but in order to happen that in the dependency injection, we have to have this injectable decorator, and we need to make sure the controller which is accessing the service are within the same module. If you do not have these things in the same module, it should be defined in another module, and that module should be imported in here. Okay, so makes sense, I hope. If you have any questions, just ask me in the chat. I will respond. Right now, I'll try to run this application. I'll try to run this application. That's my terminal. Terminal, where are you? No, not this one, not this one. So many terminals, but I can't find my. Okay, there you go. All right. So I'm within my project. You guys can see that I have the apps and everything. So I'm within my project. So I have to say nx serve, the project name that we have given. So I have named it push it. And I just have to say nx serve push it. Okay. So what it will do is it will start my application, but the inspector port is blocked. Let me just quickly stop my existing code, then we can proceed without an error. There you go. I have the another next project running. That's the cause. So let me clear back, and I will serve nx serve push it. Okay. So I have my debugger listening into this, and I have localhost application running in port 3030, and it's going to be API. So right now we do not have many API routes. We have only the API route mapped for a get route. Okay, we have a get route mapped in here, and our application has started successfully. So if I go to this web URL, and if I go in here, since my web browser can do a simple get request, I will get this message, the message which we have sent in the service layer. So if I change back within my service layer, hello API from Ramdika. Okay, if I say this one, you can see it automatically restart the application. That means all the things that I have changed is now deployed, and it is not taking that much of time. And if I refresh this once again, you guys can see hello API from Ramdika. So our API works. Okay, so since this is a get request, I can test it out using my web browser. But if you are a good programmer, you are using any other REST client, this should also work. So if I say curl, and if I say this, and the curl request also gonna give me back the same response that I got, message hello API from Randika. So I know that my REST API is not only working from the UI from the web browser, it is also working from my backend, my REST API clients. Okay. So any questions so far? Anything related to what we have developed? So it's a basic application. We are just simply showing up my name in a message, a JSON API. Okay, all good. All right, so this is like the basic form of application. Right now, what we are trying to do is we are trying to incorporate our communication with the application, at least with the Firebase. So rather than using the Firebase console, let's try to get it. Let's try to get it up and running from our REST endpoint. So the architecture of this this application would be simple. So I'm going to do a curl request or API request or whatever. And this request will hit our server. Okay, it will hit our server in here. And once the server get the message, what we will do is we will send that message to Firebase saying, Firebase, hey, I have a notification that I need to push it to the client. So earlier on, we used the Firebase console to do the pushing part and everything. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to push it using our own servers. Okay. So we need to incorporate the push notification and everything in Firebase and SQL. So what we need to do is to incorporate things in our application. Okay, so our application need to be ready to communicate with Firebase, and once Firebase communication is done, we need to push message for the Firebase. Then Firebase will send it out to our destination. It's going to be our mobile application. Okay. All right. Give me a second. I'm going through the notes. Accepting push notification. Yeah. Okay. So what we'll do is I'm gonna go ahead with the push notification implementation. We need to get a few things in order. So first thing that we need to do is get something called Firebase admin. Okay, we need to create a Firebase admin. Firebase admin and into our application. So when you want to use this Firebase admin SDK, so what we'll basically do is we will have this SDK within our application, and we will be able to do some modification to our Firebase client, Firebase application. So you guys can see we have cloud storage, cloud Firestore. We can access these API as well. Also, what we are interested is in Firebase cloud messaging. So we need Firebase cloud messaging installed. So we will be using Firebase cloud message within our application. Okay. So the SDK is available on different languages. If we go with Kotlin, we might need to use Java version. Since we are using Node.js, we will be using the Node.js version, and we will have these things in order. So since we are using the Node.js, we need to install the dependency. Okay, so we can install the dependency using the npm firebase admin save command. So anyone here knows what npm is? Or do I need to explain npm as well? Raise your hand if you need an introduction to npm, or you need to know about npm at least. You guys need to know npm. I need to know about a little bit npm. Okay, everybody seems to have a good idea. So basically, NPM is the not package manager. It's handling the dependencies for us. It's like Gradle for an Angular application. Right now, we are using NPM to install the Firebase admin tool that we need to connect. Okay. So next thing is we need um, to get the other credentials and everything in our application. So let's see how we can get that done as well while the NPM is doing its job. So I think we have the initializing part in here as well. Initialize the app. So we need the refresh token and other things. We'll see about that in a little bit. Initializing is done. Let's see whether it is completed. Okay, I have the npm ready. So I'm not gonna go into like more details like setting up MySQL and everything within the Nested application. Our goal is like to get the push notification through our backend service, but of course, when building a real application for backend services, this is not going to be the ideal one. We are not going to implement anything that sort of things. So we'll be creating a very simple backend. But if we have time, if we can utilize more, we will be using that. But right now, we are not considering any security vulnerabilities or anything like that at this moment. Okay, so we will be just going plain old style. We will just create the notification and notification resource. That's it. We are not gonna go anything fancy beyond that. But if we have time, let's sure we look into more things, and all these things that we can go ahead. All right. Then what we will do is we will create what we call a service. Okay, this service will be used to send the application. So right now we have the app service. We can use the web service if we like, or we can have the um, we can have another service. So just to demonstrate, what I'll do is I will create another module. Okay, in that way we can see how dependent injection works in here as well. So we have the app module in here. So I will create another folder. I will create this notification. Okay, so this is going to be related to notification only. So anything that I need to do the push notification, I'll put it in here. Okay, so I can also use NX as this something called NX generate. So if I need a service to be generated, service, and so we have this NestJS service semantic. That means if we use this generator, let me create another folder called services. Okay, so if we create, I will create a notification module and I will register the service. So I can use this nx generate command. It will generate some files for me. You don't have to manually create these files. In order to get this nx generate, you might need the nx extension within your extension points. Probably it is something in here, as I can remember. Should be here. Nx. Yeah, nx console. You need this nx console in place. Then you can have the VS Code support right around here. So using nx console, I can create a service and make sure you are creating a NestJS semantic service. So I can give a service name. I will say notification. Okay. So while when we give this, it's going to create a very simple notification file, service file for us. But unfortunately, I find that it is not creating in the position that we need. It is creating somewhere else. So what I'll do is I will drag and drop that service into the notification service that I have here. Okay, the generator is something we can customize the path and everything, but it is by default it is not creating where I want. So I have the notification module. I have a set of services. In there, I have a notification service. Okay, it's nothing that that's exciting. In here, you just create a new service, and it's created a test file for it. That's it. But you can create these things by yourself. I'm just exploring, explaining what are the options that we have. So we have this notification service in place. But in order to use this notification service, we need to register this service in a module. Okay, so I will create a module in here. Again, I can use the index generate command. I can say module, and you can see the NestJS semantic module. And I will call this notification. Okay, you guys can see it's going to generate in SRC notification module. But if I want to create that in the relative path, I can right click on here. I can select copy relative path. You have it. I don't find it. Oh, it was there. Not sure. Option was there. Now it is not. Why is that? Focus, generate, debug. Unfortunately, it is not there. So it's going to generate in here, but I can change the path if I like. So there is a path option. I can say generate in apps. So it will create, generate in SRC apps. The semantics and the application seems to be not working good. The generator things is not working. So what I'll do is I'll just generate it and move ahead. So it's going to be notification module. You can see it's the simplest thing that we can generate. I can even like create this file on my own, but I'll just put it in my notification section right now. I do not need this. So we have a notification, and notification module is there, and we have notification service. Right now, the module is empty. I need to provide the services. So I can say notification service. So by giving this, that means this notification service is registered with this notification module. So if I want to use this notification service, I can import this notification module in another module. Then I can use this service. So in order to use this event in another module, we need to export it. Otherwise, it will be local to this notification module. So this is saying, okay, this module will have the notification service registered with. But in order to another module to use this, you need to export this. Okay, so if you if you did not export this, it will be local to this notification module. So I'm going to use the notification service within my app module, app controller. So I have to go to the app module, and within the import section, I will import the notification module. Now, using my app service or app controller, I can access the exported services within my app module. So app module or app service. So if I want to use the app notification service in my app service, I just have to do a simple constructor injector, private, read only. Read only is optional if you don't want to modify it, but it's better to keep it read only so we don't accidentally change anything. So notification service has done the injection. Now if you go here and see, it is not complaining anything that we have with the application. But one thing that I can do is, if I go in here, if I ban the export section, now you guys can see it is getting an error saying find dependency on app service, make sure the notification available in app module. If you do not export this, the service won't be able to import it in another module like this. Okay, so notification module have to export it, then and only then we can use the notification service in another module. Okay, so now we have exported it correctly and it is working. Also, if we in the notification module, if you do not provide that, it's also gonna give us an error. So make sure to provide the service. If you want to use this service outside of the module, make sure to export. Okay, that's done. And what we have to do is we need to instantiate Firebase in our notification service. Okay, we have to instantiate the Firebase. So what we can do is we can get the Firebase initializer. So if we go to our application, so we are not going to be using the Auth2 refresh token mode. We will be using something called we'll be using the JSON file that we'll be getting into our application. So we will get a JSON file. The JSON file will contain all the information that we need. It was, if you can remember, it was available in the application, in the Android application as well. So we'll use the same thing. And using the initialize app method available on Firebase SDK app, I will initialize that one. So I have this initialize app. So in the initialize app, we have few things that we need to call. So initialize app, and initialize app takes some options. Okay, the first one is the credentials, where I can find that credential. So we have things like we have to have the cert option in here. So I can say cert and the path for our certification. Okay, we need to give the certification so we can use that certification to work with. So how are we gonna get that? We will be using something from path, and we can use something called join, and we will be using the directory name in order to work with the application. Okay, so that means I'll be taking the file like a path that we can use it. So let me do some let me show some values first. So I'll comment this one for now. So I'll use the constructor, and I will use the console log, and I will print this one, dir name. If I look in my, do I have some, okay, there's text somewhere come from. So if you guys can see that my there's this special preserved keywords in here, underscore dir name. This represent where I'm running this code from. Yeah, this is running from. So you guys can see it is running from user hrundiga documents project nest.js hrundiga dist app push it. So we are running the application under distribute directory. This is running in the distribute directory. So if you look at the distribution directory right now, this is the distribution, and this one is what we are running at the moment. Okay, at the moment we are running this source code, even though we are modifying things in our source code. As soon as we save the source code, these things will be um, compiled into our application, and it will be running the disk code immediately. So the distribution directory is where the code is currently running. That's why when I ask for the dir name, it is pointing me to the distribution directory. So we have the distribution directory. So this is where we can find, this is where the application is currently running on. So we need to have the credentials files that we will download from Firebase uh, to be working within the initialization. So if you guys can remember, in our Android Studio project, we had the where was it in the Android app? Oh yeah, so we have this Google Service JSON, which represent the file. So we will be using the Firebase SDK admin JSON, so we can utilize that one as well. So how we can get that JSON file? So we can see it in this is another way of authentication, not using the JSON file. We can use the JSON file, generate a private key, generate this is a service account declaration. We have the Firebase. Let's see. Add your Firebase SDK. We have added this SDK. Initialize once you have created this. Okay. To Afsha. So this is okay. The initialization app, the SDK, if you are currently running the in App Cloud or App Engine, but if you are not running on a Google specific environment, we should do something like this. So Firebase support Google service accounts. So we need to do the service account, and Firebase service account over a private key in JSON format. To generate the private key, you have to generate key and SQL storage the containing key. So what I'm suppose they're creating is this 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 key that we need to work with. So I think this would do the Google Service JSON. Let's see whether they are mentioning that, or they are working with the service account. You can either set Google application credentials or specify the path. We can create the path, I think. I think let me check whether the JSON Firebase SDK JSON is deprecated. Sometimes they do that. Admin JSON. Da, da, da. I think we can use the JSON file. So let's give it a try. If it did not, we will just find Google Service API. Let me open in Finder so I can copy this file. I'll copy this file and put it in my application. So I will go to push it, src and asset. So why I am putting this in asset directory? The reason behind is when I am building this application, this asset directory also get copied to the distribution directory. So if I want to access the asset directory, if I want to have some file to be shared in the source as well as the distributed version, put those things in the assets directory. That is like when we are building the application, all the things in the asset directory get copied to the distribution as well. So if I go to the asset directory right now, you guys can see the Google JSON file is automatically copied there. Okay. If you put something in the outside, it won't get copied unless you instructed it to. So if you put anything in asset directory, you will be fine. So we have this cert method, and right now we are in distribution. So what I can do is I can say, let me uncomment this line. What I can simply do is have access to that file, but having access is not enough. I might need to join it in this scenario. So I can't just have this dir name in here. What I can do is I can use the backward slash in here, directory name. I have assets. Okay, make sure the names are correct, and Google Service JSON. Okay, so we are initializing our app with the credentials that we have from this Google JSON service. Let's see whether we have any errors. Okay. So failed to process the service account JSON file. I think we are not giving the correct account, correct file. This should not be the JSON file, but it should be a service account, as it mentioned in our application. So let's go to the Firebase console and go to the service account section. In our application, I will use the console that we have in here. We go to service accounts. So service account is something like a user account, normal account, but it's only going to be providing only providing access on behalf of us. So this is the service account, like username or email that we have created. So this will provide us the capabilities that we allow this account to do. Okay, so there are like 4 service accounts available. So I'm allowing this service account to work with the Firebase and projects. Okay, on behalf of a user, we have this service account. So I'm going to generate this new private key. You're currently in the Firebase project service. Keep it confidential. Never store it in public repositories. Got it? Make sure you don't share these things. And I got my private key. So I'm going to open it. I'm going to copy this over. Right. I'm going to copy this over to my project. Where is my project? So let me open my assets. It's not the Google JSON file that we are working, but we need the service JSON. So I'm going to delete this and I'm going to open in Finder and open in reveal in Finder. Under assets directory, I'm gonna copy this JSON file. Okay, I'm not gonna open the JSON files, but I'm gonna have this SDK, the credential or the service account details, which is stored in this. Okay, so still I am getting an error. No, I think I have successfully have the service account in place. So what I had done is I have to enter the service account. For Node.js, I generate a private key, and the service account is now doing the calls on behalf of the project. On behalf of me, it's calling out to the project. So that's easy. So next thing, we'll go into our application right now. I think the initialization is done. Okay, there will be some, there won't be any other needs that we need to configure at this point. Okay. All right. What we'll do is we will get the Firebase push notification section into our service. So we using Firebase, we can do the push notification. But if you guys can remember, when we are doing the Firebase push notification stuff, we need that device ID in order to get the push notification. So we have to make sure we get it. Of course, we'll just for now, for testing purposes, whether this is working or not, what we will do is we will get the notification ID that we have used by simply running our application. If you guys can remember, when we run this application last time, we got our FCID, the token, which is unique for sending messages. We use that token in Firebase console to send it. So right now, for testing purposes, we'll just copy it from our logcat. And what we'll do is we will use that to Firebase instance ID and check whether it is working or not. Okay. Let's see whether right now we are not focusing on that. But eventually we will need the Firebase token ID to work with these things. I think we have initiated the our app. It's not giving the token for some reason. See you later, but let's get it out. First, we will send the notification to Firebase. Then we will try to get it in the push notification sections. So sending message, what is the equivalent, or what should we get within our application. We need Firebase instance in here. Let me check whether I have. It's not in here. The correct import is much needed. Let me check the documentation on Firebase admin, and you will find in the npm how we can utilize the SDK. Overview. Okay, we did this. We did the initialization app. Node.json API reference, database guide, setup guides, cloud messaging guide. Okay, let's go there. And it's coming to this. The server-side cloud machine is component, FCM backend, app server, trusted environment, cloud function for Firebase. Choosing server options. Sending messaging to your device, but it does not. Server project at the SDK. Make sure to enable cloud messaging API. Let's see whether we have enabled that one. Otherwise, I think we have enabled it so far. Yeah, Firebase cloud messaging enabled. Okay, that is done. And Firebase admin is called build send request. This is what we are working for. We need to send for a specific device. So you guys can see the registration token that we need to send. And let's see how we can send it. Get messages, get messaging, send token. It does not give us where send message is coming from. That is a bummer. So we need to get messaging. Let's see whether we have that. No, we do not have get messaging in here. They should probably give us some hint on where we can get messaging. Let's see. Should be there somewhere. So we need this get messaging instance and send to send a message. See whether we can import that somewhere. No, it's not showing. That is like wildcard. Get messaging Firebase. Okay. Get messaging is coming from where it is coming from. Now get messaging from Firebase messaging. Okay, that's good. All imports recognition are news. Cannot find module Firebase messaging. Okay, so I think we need to have Firebase messaging as well within our application. Let me try to install that as well. So we use npm install Firebase admin. Same we will be using Firebase messaging. That means app initialization happens in a different package and messaging in different. Could not read remote repository. I think we do not have such a thing. That's something not working as expected. Initialize app. Let's see, we have what are the options that we have in here. Okay, probably I need to go with import. Okay, let me do a while thing from Firebase admin. Okay, what do I have? We have database, machine learning. Okay, I have messaging in here. Firebase admin messaging. So I should be have get message. Okay. So the get messaging is available on Firebase admin messaging. Okay, probably sometimes you have to do something like this in order to find it out. If the API is not giving that much information, so I will just say get messaging, and there is the send option. Okay, so send option will send some message to my application. Okay, and send to condition, send to topic. These are like different ways that we can send our application. So we can send multiple, send one for specific user. That's kind of messaging implementations are there. So I'll use the send, and I have to give a message. Okay, give message to the send a message. So what do I have to give to send a message? I need to give a message instance. Okay, this is what we will be sending a message instance. So I can check on what is message. So I can say I can have a token message, or I can have a topic message, or I can have conditional message. Okay. So what is a token message? Again, I need to have a token in place. In the base message, I should have some data in here. Okay. So if you look at the implementation that we have seen so far, yeah, we have the data, we have the token. Okay, by using that, we can send a message. So I'll copy paste this section. Sorry, I will be not using the constructor. I have a message. I'll use this something like send test message. Okay, I'll say get messaging. Using get messaging, I use the send API, and I will construct a message. Okay, I think I have done it. And I need to have the registration token. This registration token is important when we are sending, to whom we are sending actually. So I need that registration token right now. So it's gonna send these data to my application. So in order to send, I need the token now. So I will just find it in my application. I'm not sure the Firebase. I'll just reinstall the application so I can get a new Firebase token ID. Info. I will install it. Yes, please. I'll run it again. It should give me a new Firebase ID. Okay, I will allow it. Okay, there you go. I have the Firebase instance ID. Let me copy that. I will hard code this in my application, but remember, this is not the expectation. This should be something like we have to get it from registration or something somewhere else. But for testing purposes, we will have something called a registration token. Then we can test it out whether it is working or not. First time we need let me name it as token. So token. So if you have the JSON, you can have token name token like this. Okay, you have data and the message content like this, and the token is this token. If you have the same name, you can omit the second one. So send test message will take this token, which is this this application that we are running, and the data that we are sending is this one. This is a JSON message that we want to show, and the token that we are expecting to send is this one. So all I have to do is trigger this send message. If I trigger this send message, it should send me a message. This should be triggered using awaiting. So I think I have seen await somewhere. Okay, it's using then and catch. That means I need to await on this, and this should be a sync function. So this is going to be a synchronous function, and I will await on this message sent. Okay, we'll see what happens when it is success. So one cheat thing that I can do without going anywhere, I can use the constructor while the construction happen, this send message. I can call like this. So what will happen whenever the notification message is created, I am sending this message and I am going to take the response in here, and I'll just console log the response. So what it says. So if I go in here, go to my application, so project SNG came in message 0, something like that. It has already happened. I'm not sure that I have received it. Since I'm in the foreground, I might not. So let me refresh the application once more. So I just have to organize this code, format document, and if I save, I can see the application is restarting and it is sending the message. Should be getting a message right now, and probably I did not get it. Okay, that's good. We tried the implementation, but we did not get the expected results. Let's debug this and see why we are not getting the message. Okay. So send message, promise fulfill with unique message ID has to be successfully handled off to the SCM service for delivery. So let's see why we are not getting that message. I'll just send a simple message rather than in data and leaker, this kind of thing. See whether we are getting that. I think the device token is wrong. Okay, message. Not assignable parameter message, data string, not assignable message, data is okay. All right. I need to send a JSON in this scenario, so I can send a simple message. Okay, message something. Let me check whether I have sent this message. Admin messaging can be called with an argument, default messaging service as admin. Add to access messaging services with a specific cap. Optional whole app messaging return not provided by default messaging service return. Okay, I think I have done nothing wrong in here. Let me try it in the this way response and catch error. So let's see whether I am getting an error. Okay, it's saying successfully sent the message. That means the message was sent. We are not getting that in Android Studio for some reason. Did I copy the application token ID correctly? Okay, no, that is to be fine. Android Studio is not picking up. I think I can remember a bug. Firebase push notification not working. Simulate. For iOS, iOS had an issue. I think that was fixed. Emulate. Let me check. Android. To check whether I have done something wrong with the message. Notification, the token, I think the message that I'm writing is wrong. I think we should have something called notification. So let me get the message from my Firebase admin. So notification, I can say title, I indicator, I have the token. Okay, there you go. So I should not send data or something like that. I should say notification. Now you guys can see hi Randika is popping up in here. That's done. That means I'm getting the data. So I need to say the notification and title, and it will say. Right now I'm sending out the constructor. I'm not going to do that. Otherwise, every time that I'm restarting the application, I will get a test notification. That's not what I am intended to do. So what next? To send the message, what I'll do is I will just do some modifications in here. So every time a user send his name or something like that, I will bind that value to here and try to send it as a push notification. Okay, so let me do this in my app control. Okay, the first thing that I need to do, so I will be calling out my API. Okay, calling my API, and within that API call, let's say it was, if I can remember, localhost 3030 was it? 3030 API. Okay, so while I'm calling this API, I will send a name query parameter, and I will say query parameter value is from Beaker or whatever the name that I want to see. So I will first show the message in here. Hello API. Oh, hello Ramvika, welcome to API or something like that. While I'm doing that, I'm going to also send a push notification to my server to check whether it is working or not. Okay. So basic thing, I am sending a query parameter in here. I'm going to show it in my application. While I'm doing that, I'm also going to send a push notification to my server. Okay. All right. First thing that we need to do, we need to make sure to capture the query parameter. Okay, so in order, this is the endpoint that I am going to be working. So I need to check the query parameter, how I can use it in Nest frameworks. So it's really simple. What I need to do is specifically ask a request query parameter, and then I can easily access that value. First, I will just let's like print it out, and if we get the query parameter working, then we will forward it to the next service or next layer. So using Nest.js, what I can do is I can use add query in here, and query. So that's gonna get the query parameters out for me, and I can say query. Okay, and I will have I won't have any data type association, but if I like, it's better to have an interface like let's say for name query, since I am getting a name query out of this, and it's gonna contain a name for sure. I know that's it's gonna be a name, so I can type it. So I am using the TypeScript values console log query.name. So I know for sure the name is gonna be coming there. So right now I don't see anything, but if I hit and enter, now you can see that run beaker, the parameter that I have passed is working. Let's see who is in here. Let's say Gimhani. Gimhani, and if I hit the endpoint, now I get Gimhani from there. So basically I can have a query by its type. Okay, I can use wildcard if I like, but I like to use naming as much as possible, so I know I don't jeopardize it. So I will send query.name to my get data service in here, rather than I will get the name. So I will say hello, name, welcome to backend. You backend with push notification. Okay, so I have this name, and I will bind it in here using these values. So I should get the name, and we'll come back to push notification. And if I refresh this one again, you can see message, hello Gimhani, welcome to the backend with push notification. If I change this to some other name, let's say Tarindu, and name equal Tarindu. Okay, so hello Tarindu, welcome to backend. So I can capture these API requests that I'm getting. And the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to send a push notification. And so in order to do that, I need the notification service. If you guys can remember, I use the notification service. In this notification service, I have a method called send message. Right now, I am sending to one specific device, which I took from my emulator. But this can be dynamic, or this can be registered somewhere else. We will look into that. Right now, I just want to send a message in here. So what I'll say, hi, whatever the name that I'm getting in here, I'll be receiving a name in here. So I will send that name in the push notification. So I have more control over it. So hi, name, welcome to push notifications. Okay, so we'll say hi, welcome to push notification. So in order to call this notification service, I need to inject it in my app service. I have already done that by using the constructor injection. As you guys can remember, in order to do the constructor injection, we need to have the module in place, the notification module within the app module, like what we have done here. Then we can access that. So I can access this send test message in here. So what I'll do is before I do this messaging thing, what I will say this notification service, send test message, and the name that I am interested in. So if you guys can see, this get messaging is a promise. Sorry, it's not going to be a promise anymore. I will await that. Okay, so it's going to be a type of promise. Okay, promise, and the send type will be a string. Okay, I'm going to get a string. So I am sure that this is format document. There you go. So I have the promise in here, and I have the token right here, and I will be returning that. Since this is async method, that means it's gonna run a little bit. It will run some things in the background. I have to await. That means once the push notification is done, I'll be able to send the message. So in here, I'm also gonna wrap it around the promise. And there you go. So right now, everything is in order. Let me hit an API endpoint in here. It's gonna take a little bit time because I have instruction to it to wait. So hello Tandu, welcome to backend with push notification. And the same time, I got an Android notification. Hi Tarindu, welcome to push notifications. So it works. So I'll clear this one. I'll go back to my application. Let's pick up a name. Let's say Dinuka. Okay, I hit enter. Now it's gonna say hello Dinuka, welcome to backend with push notification. And while that is happening, I get a push notification here. Hi, Dinuka, welcome to push notification. Okay, so this one right now, we have several things in place. The send message is only solved based through this token only. So if you have this token, then the token owner will get this. But if for some reason this token is renewed, for some reason we need a separate user based on the name, if we have some different tokens, if we want to send that message, this is not gonna work. This is like test message to see whether if I send something from my backend, it's communicate with the Firebase, and once the Firebase receives that message, it communicate back to the application that I am running on. So I have more flexibility over here rather than I'm using Firebase console. If I'm using Firebase console, yes, I can also test some things in here, but within this application, I have more functionality or more control over these things. Okay, so any questions up until this, guys? You have any question with related to Node.js or something related to that, or in general with this push notification stuff? Dinuka, Hussein, Takshila, Vidush, Dishani, any questions? So everybody who understand, please raise your hand. Okay, I understood the concepts behind what we are trying to achieve and what we have built. Please raise your hand. Okay, I got the point.
Need to watch the recording again, sir.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't expect you guys to get master in one go. Okay, that is fine. As long as you guys have the idea on the backend initialization part, how we have created the backend, how we have initialized the connection between the Firebase, like what we have done in here, using a service account. We have used the service account to send push notification, and we got a device token, which is coming from the Android application itself. And we are sending that specific message only for that device registration in here. So we can specifically focus on that single user since we have this token to ourselves. But there are other methods as well. For instance, let's say for some reason, you have let's say for some reason you have like a message that you need to broadcast. Okay, not for a specific use case. This is a specific use case. We know device token. Okay, so since we know the device token, we can send the message directly. But if you do not know the token, if you have no idea what's the token is all about, or you don't want to target a specific user, but target a specific user group, there is something called topics. Okay, you can send a message to a topic. Whoever has subscribed to that topic will get that notification. Simple and easy. So you don't have to target each and everyone to send this one. All you have to do is take a target and send that message to that target. Okay, so there is that option. But on some occasions, a general message would not work. That's because if you are working with a general message, then what will happen is this implementation. Let's say, for instance, we want to send a customized message. Okay, say, hi Tarindu. So it's giving us more of personal touch. Okay, okay, these guys know who I am, who is using this document, who is using this phone. So in a scenario like that, we would have to go something like a device specific token or device specific stuff. Otherwise, we won't be able to identify. But I have seen some people trying out some things like the name is captured in the application, and we send a general message. And once we get the general message, they customize it a little bit on the front end and show it to the user. But it's not something that we can mess around with push notification, because push notification, the message is already sent and it's directly showing there. But there are loopholes that we can intercept the message and we can show some customizations, but those are like very advanced stuff in terms of we are trying to do. But in here, simply a device token, we take a device token and we send that message to that device token. So if you guys look in here, so the implementation that we have done so far, the Firebase instance ID, we are taking it when we are registering a new token. Okay, so when we are taking the new token, we are having the Firebase instance ID. But for some reason, if we have multiple phones, multiple devices in this scenario, where we can have this Firebase instance ID sent us to this server. So for example, we can send the device token into our app, this API background that we API call that we have created, and using that we can store this. Okay, we can have a name in here, let's say Tarindu. Okay, and Tarindu's device token is this. and we will save that information. We will save that information within our application. And if you want to send if you want to send a notification for specifically for Tarindu, then we can search that in our database. Okay, Tarindu is having this device token ID, and if I want to send a notification to Tarindu, all I have to do is get Tarindu's device token ID and send it a message. So anyone else trying to get that, they won't get that Firebase instance, or they won't get that notification. Okay, so in order to do that, what we need to do is, rather than logging out in here, we need to have that application, or we need to have that device information registered on our service, on our application, which is going to be our backend in here. So it's up to you to go beyond this point. We can have HTTP call right around here with the Firebase instance ID. I can send that Firebase token along with a name or something that I can capture around in my application. And once it is done, I can send it to my controller. I can save it within my database. And when some requests come, let's say for the query instance, I can find my name within that database. And within that database entry, I have the Firebase token, okay? Rather than hard coding the Firebase token in here, I can get the associate token for the user and send it. So only that user will get it. Other users won't get it unless they have registered a Firebase token in here. Okay, that is simple. So you guys can easily work with these things. All right. So yeah, have a look around this, look around the push notification implementation that we have done. So we are using these backends to send push notifications. Okay. All right. Anyone needs any special section that need to be clarified before I move into the next section? Okay. All right. So we have initialized the backend. We have sent the push notifications using our backend. So these kind of services, these kind of custom backends that we are creating can be used in our applications to have more control or more gain over our application. But things we should consider when we are using this kind of application is that we are saving these details. We are keeping these details in a way that if a intruder comes into our system and they try to exploit the user database or something like that, we need to make sure that the user data that we are saving is not going to jeopardize our application. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to have some sort of security mechanisms, okay, in order to protect our user data, in order to protect our application data. Sometimes even for some simple, silly things, we need to make sure we are protecting our data within our application. So I'm not going to be talking about backend related applications. Okay, so this is a whole new course. So security along with the backend stuff. We'll not look into that, but something that we can focus on is Android related security. Okay, we need to go in much. We won't be going in much detail on Android security, but we will touch upon the basics that we need to keep in mind when we are securing our application. Okay, so we'll be talking in depth about Android application security. So we can use these tips and tricks in order to secure our application. Okay, so you can follow this blog post if you need more information, but I will read through this and explain more in detail. Okay, so you guys know that Android is based on Linux kernel, the core itself containing Linux. Both Android and Linux are open source projects, so anyone can see the code, anyone can find the code, and they can see that if there is a vulnerability, they can easily find that within the source code. Say, for example, uh, uh, let's say we are using a old version of a library, and that library is known to have vulnerabilities. Okay, if that library have a vulnerability, then if the manufacturer or someone in the Android project do not patch that, okay, patch that in a special way, what will happen is that is a security vulnerability. Okay, anyone in the internet can download it, can understand it, and there can be a vulnerability within our application. Most of the time, that's why the manufacturers within organizations like Samsung, Oppo, Google, they take the base Android application, then Android operating system and everything, and they customize it. They customize it in a way so they can secure it, they can add new features, they can have more features, and they can bind to certain application. For example, the base Android application have a launcher screen, but Samsung take it and they have their own what we call magic UI or something like that. I can't remember. They have their own UI implementation that they remove the original one. They use their own to make it more customizable for Samsung. Same goes with other applications, other providers. They have their own implementation with that. So by customizing the code, the vendors have some sort of security in place. Okay, but that doesn't mean they are customizing the whole Android ecosystem. They'll use certain amount. I mean, most they'll use a good portion of Android project, and by using that, we are exposing to some of the security levels. Okay, so we can argue that that's a fact. Actually, nothing in this world is 100% secure. Everything has a flaw on there. We are building on top of another, so many abstraction layers that can lead to huge problems, even huge security vulnerabilities. But that is something we have to live with. Only thing that in a security one, when we find a security vulnerability, the sooner we find it and we patch it, that's gonna prevent us from huge damage. And there are this prevention mechanism for security vulnerabilities, that is to stop it in the first place. Users advise we should advise users to have a proper security measurements. And as Android application developers, we should follow certain um, security features or security practices that will make most of the available application vulnerabilities won't work. Okay, so let's see what Android as operating system gives us for security our application. Okay, so in Android, we can secure our application or by providing Android with some features that we find. We have three level of security implementation. Sorry, the first level is the kernel level, second one is the application level, and the third one is the communication level. So most of the time, as a normal application developer, we would be only looking at application level and communication level security. But if you are a manufacturer or vendor or someone who is looking into the deep down of the Android ecosystem, you will find the kernel level application security as a high priority thing. So unless you work with the kernel level, what we can prevent is the application level and communication level. What sort of errors that we will do when we are doing applications, and what sort of errors that we can do in communication level. But it's good that we know the security levels that is provided by the application and uh, how we can save these things. Okay, so let's look at the Linux kernel itself. You guys know that it is Android is built on Linux kernel. Linux kernel have some features on it. Okay, so we have out of the box security from the base kernel itself. So Linux kernel have its own security mechanisms. So not on the Android level, but from the kernel level, we have security built on into the kernel itself. Apart from that, the Android OS operating system development team, they add new patches all the time and they customize the kernel. So the kernel is there, the kernel from the Linux project is there, and Android team takes the codes and they customize it. They change some stuff, they remove some stuff which are not needed. By removing that and by adding new features, they can patch new features. They can, okay, let's say, okay, the Linux kernel is using very old version of a library. They can remove that and they can add a latest version. So the Android operating system by itself, they have security improvements that they are doing. Okay, so that is like the kernel level customization. And I'm introducing some OS features like base permission models, process isolation, and security interprocess communications, application without to having use implementation those from ground. Like, say for instance, you guys know the permission model that we are using. So whenever an application wants to communicate with the internet, we have the what do you call the Android manifest. Within the Android manifest, we say users permissions. We say users permission internet. That means we are indicating from our application, okay, Android ecosystem or Android operating system, within our application, when a user is using our application, we would need to access internet. Okay, we would need to access the internet. So for fetching some stuff or using some things and so on and so forth. So in order to do such thing, in order to OS to know such thing, we enforce our application. We enforce our application to use permission-based model. If you guys can remember, when we are implementing the push notification section, you guys can remember that we had to allow from Android 13 onwards at least, we had to allow the user to opt out. Hey, we are sending push notification. Do you like it or do you want it? If you allow it, only then we will be sending push notifications. So that's kind of things that kind of application level security will prevent any other malformed malformed application accessing our internet application, our unwanted data. So these permissions will give a restriction around on the kernel saying, okay, this is a application which is gonna do internet stuff. So we are allowing it. Okay. So there was one malware application, if you guys know. I'm not sure whether you have heard the news. It's a little bit way ago. So there was the Flash application. It was just a Flash application where you can turn on and off your cameras, phones, your phone's flash. Okay, so you can go in the dark at the night. So you don't have to carry around a torch. You can just use that flash to turn on and off your phone's flash device. So what happened was that application was later on caught that it is sending all your contact information, all your messages, what you can read and everything to other servers. Okay, which is like the opposite that you want. Okay, you are sending your information to a, let's say, a hacker servers or something like that. You are leaking your information. But the problem is when we install that application, what we do is we give our consent. Okay, let's allow us to read user details, allow us to read SMS. Accidentally, we might give this, I mean, without the users, without reading the what we are accepting. User might, okay, anything can happen. I don't know why these things are there. User will click, okay, I will allow it. At the end, what will happen is user is downloading a malformed software. It's sending all the information to wrong people. So in a case like that, what will happen is the user will lost his data, and the app will do wrongful things rather than doing the flashlight on off things. It's the feature is there, but maliciously they are exposing all the data and everything to other servers. So that is not the intended purpose of the app. So I think it's got banned. But what we can do in this scenario, so for certain features that we do not like the users to access, we can always have, okay, if this application need to access internet, they should ask. Okay, they should ask, okay, this application need to access internet, would you allow it? Okay, so the user has the consent saying, okay, this is a flashlight application. Why the hell a flashlight application need to access internet? Why the hell we need to give the permission to access contacts? Okay, so by providing the barriers around the user permission-based models, then user will have some sort of consent. Okay, I download the Flash application. This is asking something else. I can deny or I can allow. Okay, so the user have the option to give the data or not. But if and only if the Android ecosystem have that permission model, it won't. It is asking if for some reason that permission model was not there. Any application developer can comes in and ask for ask us your personal detail, your gallery, and everything. Then you will have to you will give those information without your consent. So that's an issue. So permission-based systems, and the other thing is process isolation. So when it's something that's coming from Linux kernel itself. So when we are running our applications, uh, they are running in isolated environments. That means we call those things like something like sandboxes. So you can't, while we are running our application, you can't access some data in the YouTube app. So that is not possible. Sorry, every applications that we run is running in what we call a sandbox. The sandbox will contain the information, the access level uh, allocated to that application only. Uh, you can't access another application's data, or you can't access any other application which is running on the OS because of the sandbox implementation. We can't access anything outside of that sandbox. Only application data, application related stuff will be there. So in a case where you want to share information, you want to share one information to another application, you can always use something like intents. Okay, using intents, you can share information, but sharing information via intent, use the user's consent. So user knows, okay, I am sending this information to this, and I'm sending this contact detail to the messenger app. I'm sending this images to whoever like to handle this. So you can use intent to do that. Other than that, processes are running in isolation, then they can't access. And there's another popular way that we can access, which is having something like shared storage. You can share some huge files or something like within the shared storage, so any other application can read that in the public shared space. So there is another way. Otherwise, you can use intent to share information. And the other thing is IPC. So inter-process communication, which happens like in the OS level kind of thing. So I'm not going to go into IPC calls. Think OS related stuff. OS in operating system, we have certain components that need to talk to each other. Let's say, for example, the messaging engine wants to talk to, let's say, the geographic information or GPS related stuff, for example. Then we can do inter-process communication that is handled by the core operating system. Rather than they don't have access to each other, they need to do IPC calls. Using IPC calls, inter-process communications, we allow them to run the applications. Okay. So applications to run without having user implementation from the ground. So you don't have to worry about these things. Android ecosystem or Android kernel provide this security and provide these features, and they have constantly updating these things with the kernel level. They are constantly monitoring any vulnerabilities. So we don't have to worry about kernel level security unless you are a kernel developer or uh, uh, lower level or root level application developer. Okay, so the kernel itself is giving us some sort of security over what we are building on top. And the next thing, what we call is the application level security. Okay, each application will get application sandbox its own, as I mentioned earlier. So every application that we are running is running its own sandbox. So as I mentioned earlier, it's not allowing other application to tamper with another application. So it is not possible that I have my own application that I can access any data within my YouTube application or Chrome or whatever the applications that you have within your phone. So each application has its own unique user ID. So there is a user ID that need to be there, so we can use that. Each application run on a separate process from the kernel. Yeah. So whenever we want to run an application, that application run in a separate kernel, separate process from the kernel. So the kernel has kernel level isolation, sandbox level isolation, so on and so forth. So communicating or stealing data from another application is making harder. So there are file system permissions which we kind the same behavior unless the application developer explicitly share the files generated by application, not files used to develop and run. They have limited access, as I mentioned earlier. We have the model of sharing data for external storage or shared storage, and we can access those things. For example, we might get an image and we can store it in our application sandbox. Okay, the application sandbox has its own storage, but you are not allowing the whole storage. Each and every application have limited application sandbox storage. I think last time I was looking at it was like, oh, the limitation for a sandbox was like 2 GB. I'm not sure it has changed or not. I think it should probably change because um, sometimes most of the games that you play online these days are really huge. So the application specific code will reside on the sandbox. Some shareable contents, they might go in shared storage. But even with that, sometimes they encrypt those things. So any other application can't read these things. Okay, that's up to the developer. They can share it publicly or they can encrypt and put it in this shared storage. But the sandbox has a limitation where you have a place to live and place to store, but you can't use the whole application storage for yourself. So when we are developing an application, we should always think about the best practices that we do. Okay, make sure we only ask for the right permission we need. Okay, so we should be mindful enough to ask the permission that we need only to run the application. Some permissions, sometimes what we do is we put a permission to test out some feature and we forget to remove them. Example, I had one single issue with, so I need to get the IP address where I was connected. So there was a special permission for phone access for phone management. So I put it there, and while I was working with that code, what happened was that was not the permission that I was looking for. There is another permission. What I did was I did not remove the old permission. I kept it there, and while I was finally done with the new permission and it worked, and I was having an extra permission where a user might get, if somebody knows the system, they might get suspicious. Why do they need the if they need to find the Wi-Fi address, why do we need these phone permissions? Why are they asking for something that is not relevant to the application? So a well-educated user might get suspicious on wrong permissions. So to overcome this, uh, sometimes we might have a legit use case. Okay, we might have a legit use case. In say for instance, in the IP address example that we are using, we can say, okay, not only the Wi-Fi address, we might need to find your local IP address to send some notification or to this use case. You have to be very specific, or we have to be very descriptive about the use case. Okay, if you can justify your answer, okay, we are using this permission to achieve this amount of accuracy, or we are trying to improve in this way. If you can justify your answer, that is okay, as long as the user is trying to give in the consent, then that is okay. And even with the things like a flashlight application that we talked about, they are asking for gallery information for some reason. But if you can justify, okay, the flashlight application needs to set up a wallpaper. To set up a wallpaper, we need the gallery access. Then we can say, okay, that is fine. But if I don't need that feature, I can just say no. So the user should be educated, or user should be informed in this case. What is the use case and why we're going to be using that? Okay, so a justifiable reason would make the user accept it, but make sure you are not using it for bad or malicious purposes, because ultimately, if you get caught or if you are trying to do something malicious, if the user get caught and everything, what will happen is you will lose the trust of your customers. You will lose the base of your customers, and they will never trust you again for misconducting. You might get banned from the stores and everything. So think twice before you are playing with fire. You can have your application do wrongful things, but at the end you will lose a lot of your customers, and that is not a good thing. Okay, so in order to avoid such scenarios, make sure you explain why you are using this and give a good description that they can agree upon. And one other thing is application permission handling. Okay, as you guys can remember, when we developed the push notification application, we have the permission. We have the permission. User can allow it, or user can deny it. Okay, that is the two options. So if the user is giving the permission for the first time, they will have the option of saying yes or no. Okay, I will allow it, I will do not allow it. Either way, if they allow it, okay, you do your request and you get the things done. If they do not allow it, what should happen? If the user say, okay, I do not allow this, and if you forget to handle that, the application might crash instantly. Okay, and we forget to handle the negative situation, it will always it will crash. So in order to avoid such things, make sure you always handle the positive and the negative scenario. So this is like a common pattern, I would say. I have seen a lot in action. Most of us will go in the happy path. Most of us will do okay. I will accept I will proceed the successful handle. But most of the time we forget to handle the negative scenario. We forget to handle the negative sections of our application. So in a scenario like that, what will happen is that might crash. It will give a bad user permission. It will if the user haven't given the permission, sometimes the application must maybe misbehave. In a scenario like user say no, okay, I do not want to say no. I do not want to give the permission. You have, if it is a functional breaking point, okay, without this, the application won't work. Okay, you have to plead your case. Sometimes you have to plead your case and say, okay, the application won't work without this feature. So for instance, we are building a push notification application, but our main functionality is sending push notification. Let's say we are sending push notification on weather alerts, okay, or we are sending a sale alert. The main purpose of our application is sending push notification, and user is saying, no, I don't want any push notification. Then we have to plead our case saying, hey, this application is all about sending push notification. If you do not allow this application will not be able to fulfill your needs. This application will not work as you intended. So in order to avoid such a case, in order to avoid such thing, what we can do is we can plead our case. If for some reason user said no and user come back to the application, we can say, we need this permission. Please allow it from your application settings. Otherwise, we won't be able to work. So we have to be very careful when we are pleading our case as well. All right. Yeah, we talked about this. We will talk about storage in our application and app signing in upcoming lectures. And I think we can go with communication security once we are communicating with the backend applications as well. For now, we will be working. We have talked about application and permission models. Next time we will talk about app storage security, and we will see it in action where we can where we can have data securely, and what are the things that we need to secure, and what are the things that we can consider not secure. Okay, up until this point, do you have any questions? Do you have anything to ask with regarding the security or the things that we talked earlier on? Okay, seems to be not. Okay, then we will conclude our lectures for today, and I think we will be able to meet day after tomorrow. Until then, guys, thank you for tuning in. See you on Wednesday.